It happens in every growing city. Longtime landmarks come and go as progress pushes property values to the point of can't say no. But there are a surprising number of places with amazing provenance that have survived. The nondescript house where Dolly first lived, the place where Patsy Cline first heard Crazy, and countless front porches where hits were written in sit-outside weather. You can read dispatches for hours on Brian Mansfield's Facebook site called Nashville Musical History Tour. The longtime journalist goes deep and wide with information you can't get on the typical bus or walking tour.
Everybody's got a few of these stories and a few of these places that they know about, but nobody knows all of them. And I decided I wanted to know all of them. I worked for a PR company that had offices on 17th, and I would go out at lunch and just walk the row, and I started to put everything together. It's like, oh, that's where that song was written. That's where that record company used to be.
I've been following Brian's tour for years and knew this would be a conversation that you'd like too. I'm Demetria Kalodimos. It's Banner and Company. Well, Brian, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I am a mad fan of the Musical History Tour. And Lord knows if we could steal a Beatles melody, of course, we'd be singing Roll Out for the history tour.
Which is exactly where I took the name from. Yeah, the Nashville Musical History Tour.
Great choice.
Yep.
This is such a great idea. Is it just, apologies first, is it just the Gray Line Tour, Map of the Stars, Homes goes online, or is it much more professionally curated and vetted?
I don't know that I would say it's professionally curated and vetted, other than I'm a real stickler for making sure that I get my facts straight. And when something happens and I don't, it absolutely drives me crazy. But what I sort of built this from is I'm a Nashville native, but I didn't grow up around the music industry. But I went into the music industry, and I have worked out of my house for almost my entire career. So I knew all of these stories about Music Row, but I didn't know where all of the places on Music Row actually were, because I did most of my business by phone and by email. So I didn't go down to Music Row enough to know how everything fit together. And for a couple of years, I worked for a PR company that had offices on 17th, and I would go out at lunch and just walk the row, and I started to put everything together. It's like, oh, that's where that song was written. That's where that record company used to be. That's where Hillbilly Central is. And so I started to put it together that way and just post about just all of the places beyond Music Row that the stories of Nashville happen, and just kind of tell these stories through the lens of location, which was a way that I hadn't really seen it done a whole lot outside of the Gray Line tours, which kind of stick to Music Row, downtown, and the big celebrity homes.
Yeah. Do you recall the first landmark that really stuck in your head and you thought, Eureka, I've got something no one else has?
Oh, boy. No, I absolutely do not remember the first one, because everybody's got a few of these stories and a few of these places that they know about, but nobody knows all of them. And I decided I wanted to know all of them. I guess it starts with the Owen Bradley Quonset hut. That's probably the first place on Music Row that everybody knows. But one of my favorite early ones was learning that Scotty McCreery lived at the Drury Hotel by the airport for like a year after winning American Idol, because it was like, I didn't have any stuff. I wasn't here in Nashville enough to get an apartment. And this was near the airport. They would give me the same room every time if they could. If they couldn't, all the rooms looked the same. And they would let me park my truck there, and they would hold all my stuff until I came back. And so I lived at the hotel for a year. And who would imagine? And that's the sort of thing that made me realize that there's stuff just all over town that has these stories that nobody imagines until you find out. And then they change the way that you see places that you drive by every day.
Yeah. Wasn't it the case, though, where rentals and houses were kind of passed down in the biz? I know in TV, if someone had a great lease and they were leaving to buy a house or whatever, another person would inherit the apartment, and it became like, a family lineage.
And those sorts of things happen. They're a little bit harder to track because rentals are... It's difficult to find paper trails online for rentals from 60 years ago. In Nashville, it's very easy to find property records from 60 years ago because Nashville has one of the best digitized property record systems of any city in the country. And so it was very easy to find that when a house sold into the music industry, it often stayed in the music industry. And so you would see, Brenda Lee would own a house, and then a producer would own that house, and then another producer would own the house, and it would kind of stay in the family, so to speak. And I've seen a lot of houses that have had a couple of owners or a couple of residents like that.
Is it fun? Do the actual names pop up, or are they in trusts and sort of anonymously?
They're in trusts now. They weren't in trusts like prior to the mid 80s. So if you're looking in the 1940s and then 50s and 60s, you're seeing the actual name. So what you have to know there is you have to know that Ray Stevens' real name is Ragsdale, not Stevens. And so you're looking for Ragsdale, or that Sonny James was Jimmy Loden, or that, Jerry Reed's real last name was Hubbard. And so
right.
you start looking for those. But no, it was just, if you're in a city directory, it's just, there they are.
Early on, I lived over in sort of the Westmead, Hillwood area.
Okay.
And wasn't there a Patsy Cline house there?
The house that was used in Sweet Dreams as the dream house, the exterior for that is in the Westmead Hillwood area.
Not the real home.
But not the real home. No, she lived more out toward... the way that residences in the music industry kind of happened in the 50s is a lot of them started living in the trailer parks on Dickerson Pike, because there wasn't the stigma with trailer parks then that there is now. It was just seen as an easy, inexpensive way to start housing. And so people would stay in these trailer parks, and then as they got money, they would move out to new subdivisions like Madison. And so Patsy lived in like the Madison and Bellshire and then eventually Goodlettsville areas. So she like rented in Madison, bought a house from Bob Moore, the bass player, in Bellshire, and then lived there about a year and a half, and then moved out to what everybody knows as her dream home out in Goodlettsville.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned the trailer park, because I think I was at a Nashville Cats program some years ago where they were talking about a specific trailer that had housed like Merle, Willie Nelson, just the list went on and on. I don't know if that's accurate, but it could have been.
If it's not accurate, it's pretty close, because there was a trailer park by the military cemetery, and I'm trying to remember.
On Gallatin Road.
Yes, yeah, on Gallatin Road, and I think Willie lived there for a while, and then before that it was Roger Miller, and I'm getting my details maybe a little bit off.
Roger Miller.
And apparently in the front there was a sign that said trailers for sale or rent. But then there was also a park out on Dickerson Road, which is still there, which had so many people in the music industry that that they called it Hillbilly Heaven. And I mean, it's one of the big trailer parks that's still out there.
Now, was the proximity to roads a reason why a lot of the bluegrassers and Grandpa Jones and String Bean and all these people were up there, like in Ridgetop area and Madison and Point's, I guess, north?
Yeah, I haven't done that much research out that way, but I mean, of course, a lot of those guys came from rural areas, and so having the land and being out there made them a lot more comfortable than living in a suburb. So I think
felt
that
like
was
home.
Yeah, felt like home, felt like success to have some land. And so that's you kind of get those two things going. You have the people that want to live in close to the end, the musicians who want to be on call and be able to get right to the studios, and then you have the people that land was the signifier of success.
And then, of course, famously in the 70s, 80s, you've got the Lake folks. You've got Johnny Cash and Roy Orbison and I guess the Oak Ridge Boys. And who else was out there Hendersonville way?
Oh, goodness. Let's see. Well, most famously, much later, Taylor Swift. But Tammy Wynette was out there, and Bob Luman. Bob Luman was out on Caudle with Cash and Roy, and then later Marty Stewart moved out there.
Right.
But one of the interesting things to me about that is that Johnny Cash's home was was designed by an architect named Braxton Dixon, who was a really well-known, built great houses out here. And this
Great
was the house.
Name.
I know, isn't it?
It's like two last names for a name. Yeah.
And so Cash saw the house that Braxton was going to move into himself, and finally coerced him into selling him the house. Roy Orbison lived in a house nearby that that Braxton also designed, and then later Tammy Wynette lived in another house, I think it was on the other side of the lake, that he designed. All three of those houses burned down. All three of them for completely different reasons that had nothing to do with the houses themselves. But all three of those Braxton Dixon houses are gone now.
Right.
It's just the weirdest thing that all three of them would, and they burned in different decades,
Different
reasons, and they're all just gone.
Wow. With those being the exception, for the most part, some of these houses you post, at least by today's standards, are pretty modest.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are still standing. Or am I wrong?
No, well, a lot of them are still standing in Madison.
Okay.
In Madison, I like to say that there are more houses in Madison that are still in musicians' families than there are that have been demolished for tall skinnies. For whatever reason, those houses all just kind of stayed there, and there wasn't the big development move, and by the time people started looking at Madison for that sort of thing, I think the council members and the community had sort of decided that's not happening here. So they're a little bit more conscientious about the history of the neighborhoods than some other places are. And I do tend to focus on houses that are there because
it's more fun. Yeah. Better story.
They make better pictures. And they are kind of modest because, and if you go to Graceland in Memphis, one of the things that you always hear from people is like, that's much smaller than I expected it to be, because you didn't have these big sprawling mansions back then, especially in Tennessee. And you didn't have the expectation that famous people lived in big houses like that. And you also, in country music, you didn't make that kind of money in the 60s and 70s. You really didn't start making real money in country music until well into the 80s and 90s. So it was kind of like if baseball players back in the 30s and 40s were just people that would deliver ice
in the
working
off-season.
Class,
right.
Yeah. And country music was the same way because they didn't sell, in most cases, the way that that the big pop stars sold. And so on the few times that happened with the Everly Brothers or with Elvis or something like that, a lot of times those people would move to Los Angeles and they would have bigger houses out there, and the houses that are here are the ones that they started in.
What's your process? I mean, you put out an address, and I'm wondering if the residents ever get a little ticked at you.
It happens occasionally, and I'm having to be really careful about that now, because after years of being at a certain level of distribution on Facebook, it has all of a sudden just blown up. And so I'm trying to balance the privacy concerns with the public records, because most of what I publish in terms of the facts of the locations, stuff that I can find in 5-15 minutes online. There are some times I try not to post about something that's still in the family or a place where a prominent person is still living. And so I got a few addresses like that I'd really like to post about, but I know the person that lives there now, and I'm waiting for them to sell the house there. I mean, there is one specific case, which is a great story, and there's a contingency offer on the house. And I realized that somebody that I knew lived there. And so I emailed them and I was like, you gonna sell that house? It's like, I hope so. But I'm not gonna do anything until that house sells, because I don't want to make it awkward for him as he's trying to sell the house. And there was one recently where the house is still sort of in the family, and there may be some things in the house
of value
that were there when the person I was writing about was there several years ago. And so I actually pulled that one down when I heard from the family. And then there was another one where they were clearly really uncomfortable with the idea of people knowing that a person who is still very famous had once lived there. And so I pulled that one down. But there have been others where I've talked with them and just said, this stuff's all out there. I've never heard from anybody that has had problems with a sudden increase in people driving slowly by their house, except unless it's me. And I keep in touch with them and it's like, here's my number. If something starts to happen, let me know and we'll revisit this. So, but it's a balancing act, especially as the popularity of the site is growing.
It's Banner and Company. I'm Demetria Kalodimos. We'll be right back. When we launched Banner and Company more than a year ago, we wanted to help you get to know your Nashville neighbors. One of the best ways to know a neighborhood is to tap into the experience of a realtor or two who really know the city and the region. Richard Courtney and Lisa Peebles are a pair to draw to, as they say. Kind of like matchmakers, they have the experience and relationships to connect you with people and homes that best serve your personality and your lifestyle. And with more than $1 billion sold, you can bet you'll be in good company. To connect with Richard Courtney and Lisa Peebles, visit NashvilleLuxuryEstates.com. You and I are estate sale and junk sale rats. I know that for sure. Isn't it interesting when you walk into a place, and many of these places, time has stood still. I mean, the walls could speak or sing to you. Have you gone on an interior in any of these places that you know has the provenance of star power?
I haven't done that I haven't done that for publication yet, with kind of one exception. A few years ago, I did sort of a collaboration with an estate sale company who was doing this estate sale of the printer who printed the first fanfare programs, printed the Opry programs for like decades. And I knew that there was going to be stuff in there that I would desperately want. And so I said, if you let me in and to take pictures of the stuff that's there to sell, I can post about that for like a week in advance on my pages, and it will drive people to your sale.
Yeah, sure.
And he agreed to that. I couldn't buy anything in advance because he had posted pictures of everything, and they get real protective about that because they don't want people coming to their sales and going, well, where is all of this stuff? But what it did do was when the estate sale opened, I knew where everything was because I had taken pictures of it all. And so while I was taking those pictures, I kind of mapped out everything that I wanted. And I walked in first and in 5 minutes had grabbed, I grabbed Opry programs. I had grabbed a Dolly Parton coloring book that had a note from Dolly to the printer. I'd gotten a book of Sam Jones sermons from 1892, the year that the Ryman was built.
Holy cow.
And so stuff like that. And I just got everything that I wanted that day. And I got a discount because of the collaboration.
Sure. That's the way to work it.
I've done stuff like that. And I have done, I've gotten some real good close-up pictures of houses because I took them as I was walking into the estate sale, things like that. But I haven't done posts from inside the houses, just mainly because I haven't put in the work to do that in advance yet.
Talking about photos, one of my personal favorites that I found on your site was the young, I'm going to say preteen Dwayne Allman.
Oh, yeah.
Standing on Bransford Avenue in front of his, I guess his grandmother's house?
No. That was
the family house.
It was after he lived there, but it was, and that sign is just him standing by a street sign post. So you don't actually see that house there. And that house is gone now.
All of those houses
all
are
of those,
gone.
yeah.
Right behind Giotis.
Yeah. Took every one of them out. And I don't think I got a picture of that house without me standing in front of it. I really wish that I had thought, I knew somebody that went over there after they had cleaned everybody out, and he kind of snuck onto the property and like took some bricks and got some bricks and stuff. And I was just like, yeah, I should have done that. But yeah, the history of the almonds in this town is one of the most fascinating things to me. Partly because if you start assembling the pieces of the puzzle, you can really see how everything sort of fit together for them. But the house on Bransford was where they were living when their father was murdered in Virginia. And then after that, they moved out to Westmead for a while. Before that, they had lived over closer to 440 when it was just Dwayne. I think Greg was born at the Bransford house. And then after their father was killed, they ended up in Westmead for a while. They ended up in Florida for a while, kind of went back and forth. Went to Parmer School. There's still the facade in Belmead.
Yeah.
Amy Grant went there too. So that's where they went to elementary school. They went to Castle Heights for a while, out in Lebanon for high school. But their mom worked on 8th Avenue at an auto parts store for a while. You know, when that stretch, it's Broadway. When that stretch of Broadway was all car dealers
auto
and
row,
stuff. Yeah. And so she worked in an auto parts store, like on the left as you're going into town. And Greg talks about spending summers at his grandmother's house, like out in the front, playing out in the front yard. And so when you know where her house is, you go, all right, well, she drove in from Westmead to go to work. She dropped him off at the grandmother's house and then went a few blocks away to to her job and picked them up. The grandmother lived in the building that preceded what is now Virginia's Market, down there at Music Row by the Virgin Hotel.
Yeah.
One of the places that they call the Murder Mart. And so the building before the Murder Mart was Greg and Dwayne Ullman's grandmother's house that they used to hang out in. So when he writes in his autobiography about playing in his grandmother's front yard, that's the parking lot of Virginia's.
Why aren't there plaques everywhere?
Because there would be plaques everywhere. Because you think, well, there's probably been 500 people that somebody would care about in the entertainment industry in this town. If they were based here, they all lived at least 4 places. So that's 2,000 data points before you even get to where they went to school, where they went to church, where they got married, where they got arrested, where they were buried. So, I mean, it literally would be everywhere. And so when people ask me about preservation and why did these houses get torn down, it's like, because nothing would ever get torn down.
Yeah, you'd have to save everything.
You would have to, yeah. And one of the weird things about Nashville is what makes Nashville preservation so challenging is that in most cities, it's the architecture that you want to save. It's a beautiful church building. It's a particular style of office building or whatever. In Nashville, you have very boring buildings with incredible stories that happened in them. And the people that did those stories don't care anything about those buildings. They care about what they're doing. And so Nashville creatives are always so busy looking at what they're going to do next that they don't spend a lot of time going, we should keep this place where something happened before and make sure that stays the same so everybody else can see that, because they're interested in what happens inside the building, not the buildings themselves.
You and I go back probably before your journalism days to when you were selling books at Davis Kid.
We do. I still remember you coming in, and I can't remember if you were looking for James Ellroy's The Black Dahlia or
I think I bought it from you.
You did buy it? Yeah. Oh, you absolutely bought it from me. I just can't remember whether you came in wanting it or you came in looking for like hard-boiled crime, and I was like, oh, you got to read this.
That's all me too.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, of course, I worked with your wife, Nancy.
Right.
And you're a native. What was your radio station growing up?
Ooh. So my first radio station growing up was WSM AM because it carried the Braves games, and Hank Aaron was getting ready to break Babe Ruth's home run record. So that was my first radio station. And then it moved to WMAK. So I listened to WMAK for the music, listened to WSM for the Braves games, and then eventually, like most kids my age, we moved over to KDF in the years where, Moby would play, at night and get like a 40 share. He would outdraw TV shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those were my big stations.
Would you agree with me that Nashville DJs are as good as Nashville musicians in a way? I mean, they were inventing genres here on the radio that were adopted nationwide.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's true across the board for media, that you get the people that you have had that either came up in this town or made their bones in this town, whether it's Oprah Winfrey or Scott Shannon or Moby or Jerry House or Dan Miller or Pat Sajak. I mean, there's so much that came through this town. I remember looking in a newspaper it was like a Friday or Saturday night radio schedule, and you had on one station you had the Grand Ole Opry, and so you had Johnny Cash and the Everly Brothers and all of and then on WLAC you had John R. and Gene Nobles basically inventing R&B radio, and then you had this incredible lineup on WSIX that would have just dominated anywhere else because their local DJs were so good, but they were the local DJs and the other stations were Clear Channel broadcasters. So they were going to like 38 of the 50 states. And it didn't sink in until that point, just what riches in radio that Nashville had back then, because it was just, I mean, how do you choose between the Everly Brothers and John R.
Yeah, yeah.
every Friday night?
It's Banner and Company, and my guest is journalist and collector Brian Mansfield, who is the expert guide on the popular Facebook site Nashville Musical History Tour. We'll be right back. Today on the Banner, we published a piece on AI and this new humanable certification that might inform or even dissuade a consumer from buying. How do you feel about that? To stamp something, this was made by something other than a human.
Yeah. I have a lot of ambivalence, might be the best word, because I have some things about AI that really excite me. I have some ways that I use it that I find very helpful, but I also know that there are significant rights issues involved, which are going to be more important in Nashville than in most other cities. That it adds a level of complexity to the discussion here, and I think those are two different. I think the rights issues and creating with AI are two separate but related things, and so the rights issues concern me a lot, because so many people that I know, myself included, make their living from rights that they hold in the works that they create, which they should have control over who uses those for commercial purposes. Right. So that's one thing. But on the creative side, as a consumer, I don't necessarily care how the final product gets created, as long as the final product moves me in the way that I need it to move me. And I think that can be done in so many different ways that I don't see AI as the same kind of issue there. I use it a lot in the creation of things that I do, partly because I'm really bad at writing bad first drafts, because I know that they're bad first drafts and I don't like to write bad things. AI is very good at writing bad first drafts. And I am, because I tend to be kind of scattered and disorganized and, as you've noticed, ramble.
Not at all.
Not at all. AI is very good at taking all of the notes that I make and the rabbit holes that I go down and organizing them in ways that help me see where I'm trying to go. And so I really like it for those sorts of things. And I can see how musicians or other music creators could use those tools to get the things that they want out of their music. And if the net result of that is that I love it, I don't really care who created it or how it got created, although I will find the story of who created it and how it got created very interesting.
Right. You've written for so many outlets, I can't even list them here, and done, syndicated radio and just been immersed in telling the story of music. You've seen Nashville hot, cold, and lukewarm musically. What's the temperature now?
I have been, first of all, I'll say I don't have the problems with mainstream country that a lot of people do. I just like music. I like what John Cage called organized sound. So, if you're beating sticks in an interesting rhythm, or if you're making country music for the radio, I just like music.
You're down.
I just like music. So, and it's all over the place. I have been as excited about mainstream country music, which is kind of the core of the industry here, as I have been since I really started in the late 80s and early 90s with that big country boom. They talk about the class of 89 with Garth Brooks and Alan Jackson and Clint Black and Travis Tritt and everybody. I think the last 5 years have been that exciting in country music, and I haven't seen it like that since then. And so I think this has been a great time for music across the board in Nashville, whether it's mainstream country that you listen to country radio, or whether it's all of the different kind of alternative scenes that pop up around that. It's very exciting to me right now at every level of creation.
So who's on heavy rotation, and are you dropping needles, or are you listening in the car, or what are you doing?
I don't know that anybody's in heavy rotation, because I got Spotify Wrapped a few weeks ago, and I think the track that I had listened to most, I had listened to 19 times over the course of the year. So I listen very broadly, but not necessarily very deeply. And so, it'll just, God, lately, heavy rotation for me lately has been, it's been Todd Snyder. It's been Joe Ely. It's been Raul Malo.
Yeah.
It's been all of those people that I spent years covering, listening to, and maybe hadn't spent as much lately, and going, oh yeah, I listen to country music in large part because of Joe Ely. I loved country music in the 90s in large part because of the Mavericks. And so there's been a lot of rediscovery lately. And then, if I find a house related to the Everly Brothers, I'll go listen to the Everly Brothers all day.
And with that said, I'm sure we're going to hear unreleased, undiscovered demos and other things from our departed musical friends.
I would hope so. But in every one of those cases, because they weren't people that I kept up with religiously for every album through the entirety of long careers, it's been wonderful to me to go back and see just how much great stuff there was from all of them, a lot of which I knew and a good chunk of which I didn't. And being able to go back and go, wow, Raul really did some just amazing stuff, Maverick solos, collaborations across the board that somehow I managed to miss. It's just been, it's been a gift to hear that voice for hours.
Yeah. Boy, we didn't even scratch the surface.
Not even close.
I'm going to ask you one last question before you choose from our fishbowl.
Okay.
It's the old burning house question. Besides your family and your pets, you've got a lot of cool stuff. What would you run back for?
Hard drive. Because I lost a hard drive once and I miss it every day. It would be the hard drive. After that, I would probably get hung up on decision making and end up burning in the house if I did it. So I'm just gonna say I would grab every hard drive and laptop I could get my hands on, because that's where the photos are, that's where the information is, that's where the research is.
Well, remind us again where the musical history tour can be found and what's coming up.
Okay, it's the Nashville Musical History Tour. It's a Facebook page, so facebook.com/Nashville Musical History Tour. And there are reels and posts and stories going up every day right now. And and it'll be all over the place, from where the lead singer from Old Dominion first lived when he came to town, to jazz guitarist Lenny Breaux's home in the 70s, to where the Everly Brothers' mother lived, who outlived both of her sons. Or the place I just did one on the way over here where REM played their first show in Nashville.
It's dying to take you away, folks. Banner and Company is a production of the New Nashville Banner. This episode is produced by Steve Haruch and edited by me. The original music is by Verlin Thompson. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or go to NashvilleBanner.com. You're in good company. In the fishbowl is our final question.
Oh, okay.
You never know who posed it, but it was someone that sat in that chair previous to you. So, yeah,
okay. All
it's
right.
a crapshoot.
Well, let's see what we got here. Oop, if I can pick it up.
Read aloud, if you
And the
would.
question is from Jasmine Ledsinger. Is that pronounced right? Who is the
Nashville native you think has made the biggest splash and biggest impact in the city?
Was Siegenthaler from here?
I believe so.
If Siegenthaler was from here, if John Siegenthaler was from here, that might be the Nashville native that I would go with. Yeah, in the city, it would be. I mean, there might be a developer, but I don't know where the developers are from. I don't really study the developers. So the people I know, if Siegenthaler's a native, it'd probably be Siegenthaler.